Yes, the valuation is super interesting. $45 billion post-money valuation. So it takes into account the $5.6 billion that Waymo raised from Alphabet, the Google parent, and its parent last week. But you'll remember we talked about how it included outside investors like Andreessen Horowitz and Fidelity. And like that's where the valuation comes from. But it's so interesting because you can either look at it two ways. That valuation of 45 billion is like many hundreds times what its revenue is right now. It's in the early stages, so maybe it's too high. But if you went on social media, the response to our reporting is, well, hold on. If Tesla's worth whatever it's worth based on its robotaxi prowess, why is Waymo not worth more?
How does Waymo stack up with the other self-driving, I guess, competitors in the market right now?
That's the question, right? And it's really important to distinguish them at a technology level. Waymo wants to run a proprietary ride-hailing service where you summon a robotaxi like you would an Uber or a Lyft driven by a human. But it has proprietary sensor hardware technology and software that it puts into retrofitted cars. Zoox, which is owned by Amazon by comparison, has a purpose-built vehicle, no steering wheel, no pedals, inward-facing seats. It wants to do both. Design the hardware, all of it, but then have that proprietary ride-hailing service. And then as we've learned in recent weeks, Tesla wants to do both as well. You know, they all compare differently and how they've progressed in their deployment in the real world.
You didn't mention Cruise.
Oh, no, I didn't.
Why not?
Ding me on that one.
Well,
because
but is that for a reason? Is that because the tech's not it doesn't stack up like it does with these other competitors?
Cruise has suffered the regulatory headwinds more than any other. You'll remember the incident in last year where a Cruise vehicle collided with a pedestrian and dragged it for a distance, and how Cruise handled the fallout with that led to regulators basically pulling their on-road access from them. They aren't running a commercial service anymore. They're not charging for rides. They've really fallen behind. And GM, General Motors, the parent of Cruise, has pulled back its financial support, which has meant that Cruise has had to adjust its technology plans as well. Like Zoox, Cruise wanted to do a purpose-built shuttle and also had like eye-watering valuations in its past years when it had raised funds from GM and other outside investors. But it just is a management issue. It's a them problem as much as it is the sort of broader landscape we're talking about with robotaxis.
Ed, you write along with Katie Roof and Jillian Tan from Bloomberg News that Waymo has already delivered upwards of 150,000 paid trips each week. Just put that number into context and how it describes what stage of the business cycle I guess Waymo's in right now.
Well, 150,000 paid trips a week is across three markets, San Francisco, LA, and the greater Phoenix area in Arizona. But what I know from Waymo and from speaking to the leadership is that most people take a short trip, 2 to 3 miles. So think about the numbers. When you take a 2 to 3 mile Uber trip in Manhattan or in SF, what does it cost you? Let's say $15, $20. So do the math, 150,000 times $10 or $15 or $20 each week and then times it by 52, it's just not a lot of revenue. But what they are doing is showing that there is a market there. Riders are willing to pay for the experience of going in a robo-taxi without anyone in the front seat driving the vehicle. And then the question is, how do you scale? At the state level and at the federal level, here in this country at least, you need the approvals from regulators. But it's easier now to see the broader economics in the future.
Okay, so help us out a little bit with the valuation here. I'm looking at Uber's market cap, close to $150 billion. Lyft, a tiny fraction of that, coming in at just $5.3 billion. Would the model for Waymo, and is the model for Waymo going to be just a ride-hailing service?
Yeah, I mean, I have so many questions for Waymo, and I've tried to ask them, and some they've answered, some they haven't. Think about it this way. You need scale and constant operation to make the economics of this work. So if you're watching us right now on YouTube, we're showing a video of a retrofitted Jaguar I-Pace. The sensors that Waymo uses are expensive. You know, this is the Elon Musk debate. The reason Tesla uses cameras and not LiDAR or radar sensors is because they believe it is scalable. Cameras are cheaper to put on a vehicle than those other sensors are. And so Waymo is cautious, like all of the robotaxis are, but to answer your question, its valuation is held back by the idea it's subject to regulators, consumer attitudes, the government, in growing state by state and having enough scale where the economics of running a service like that makes sense. It's very hard without having actual deployment to do the math on it.